welcome Dr. Robert Murray to our hot topic. He is one of the leading experts on food security, and he has spent over 20 years in the field of pediatric gastroenterology and nutrition with the Ohio State University School of Medicine, and most recently was the director of the Center of Healthy Weight Nutrition. Dr. Murray has also served as the pediatric medical director for Abbott Nutrition. For 10 years, he was a member of the American Academy of Pediatrics Council on School Health, serving as chair in the final 4 years. Dr. Murray is a board member of the Action for Healthy Kids as well as the Children's Hunger Alliance, and previously was on the board of Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Foundation. Dr. Murray is currently the president of the Ohio chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And so we are so excited to have him present on this very important issue. If you have any questions during his discussion, please do type them in the chat or hold them until we can unmute everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here talking about food insecurity with this wave of PMP. You know, this is a very interesting topic for us in the AAP. I think every pediatrician is uncomfortable with the thought that there are hungry kids. And we've been working on this problem in the U.S. for over 50 years, and it continues to be a difficult one to tackle. But I think we have some good leadership, good guidance, and if there's a message I want you to take away, it's that if we can find the child, we have the programs to treat them. So it's mainly a question of finding them and then giving them access to existing programs. One of the things that we sometimes forget is that the social determinants are kind of interlocked in a way. So there are a lot of different stresses that are clustering together around families. Obviously, poverty is one of the powerful links between a lot of these problems, but it is interesting that food insecurity is one of the many adverse childhood experiences that can cause a level of stress that is damaging for the child and can become a permanent part of their personality. So it's incumbent on us to find these kids early in life, get them hooked up with resources, and try and protect them to the extent possible. So one of the simple questions that was described by the policy statement on poverty is this simple one: do you have difficulty making ends meet at the end of the month? And obviously identifying the child and family that are facing poverty is a huge step forward in being able to offer them resources which we have available. So this is a pretty simple and sensitive measure for finding families if you can make it part of your screening. It's interesting to me that the recession that we went through, if you look at it in comparison with previous recessions over the last half century, this one was like nothing we've ever seen before. And what struck me about this particular massive recession that we went through in 2007, 8, and 9 is that the safety net to protect families from poverty held and did their job, particularly the one on nutrition, did extremely well. When you look at enrollment statistics for all of the programs, SNAP, WIC, school meals, all of those had surges, big surges in enrollment. And even as the recession ended, we still see numbers that are higher than pre-recession in almost all of those programs, which I think is a reflection of the not just the lost jobs, but the poor quality jobs that a lot of people were left with after the recession. One of the things that's striking about poverty is that it's circumstantial and unpredictable. There's kind of a myth that there is a core of impoverished people that's stable and static, and that actually isn't true. This is extremely circumstantial, and The family will be above the poverty line and cruising along, and then the car breaks down, or dad loses a job, or mother gets a chronic illness, and it throws the family into chaos. So we've built a whole series of programs to stop that family from sliding into poverty and to keep them connected and protect them from having all kinds of different problems, such as transportation and health problems, but also housing, which is absolutely fundamental to family structure, and then nutrition is one of them. And nutrition is one that I think kind of gets more hidden and a little bit harder to identify, which is why we're talking about it today. So here we have 1 in 5 kids who are food insecure at any given time. And as I said, it's circumstantial, so they'll move in and out of food insecurity in different periods. But certainly when you look at food insecurity across the country, children are by far the biggest group at risk. Seniors are another group. It's interesting that we tend to think of urban, inner urban food insecurity, but deep rural can match those urban statistics. It tends to go with low education, as does poverty. Minorities, immigrants, single-parent homes, and working poor are all at risk for food insecurity. It's a very powerful stressor. It's not just about eating and being hungry, but it actually takes a psychological toll on these kids, particularly adolescents. When you talk to kids who have been food insecure in their life, they describe this kind of epiphany in their adolescence when they realize their circumstances, and it's extraordinarily embarrassing and causes a great deal of anxiety among this group. It is associated with emotional stress, depression, and suicide among adolescents. We have built a tremendous safety net here. After the Depression, we started these programs and built them aggressively in the 60s and 70s. So we now have nutrition programs that cover the gamut of problems and subpopulations within the U.S. that need help at various times. For children, of course, we depend on WIC, the Child and Adult Care Food Program, CACFP, summer food service, school breakfast, school lunch, and SNAP. Those are the primary things that directly support children. The components of food security are, of course, availability of food and access to food, but it also is the ability of the family to use that food safely and in a way that comprises a good nutritional pattern. And then finally, stability, people's ability to access and utilize food on a consistent basis, and that's really what we're talking about today. There was, and I have it cited here, the Promoting Food Security for All Children policy statement really gives a lot of information about food insecurity, but one of the takeaways that all of us should realize is that we have this simple 2-question screen that has a 97% sensitivity. So these are good screening questions. They are not offensive to people. It tends to draw out the story of food insecurity and be able to identify that family and that child with extremely high accuracy. So this is something that we want to get into practice, and we would like to see all physicians incorporating in their practice on a regular basis at all well child visits and all nutrition-related visits. If you find the child who's food insecure or the family who's food insecure, obviously the first order of business is acute food access. And so there are a couple of ways that you can find food. One is using 211.org. They provide access to resources for any kind of emergency, whether it's housing, food, transportation, health, whatever. So that's a kind of a general resource. It is pretty spotty around the country, though, as you use it. In some places, it's extremely rich in resources, and in others, less so. So the backup would be to get a hold of your area food bank, which in turn has connections with food pantries all in their service area, and find the food pantry that's closest to your family in need. Now, I'm going to give you a resource at the end of the talk here that we've put together here at the Ohio chapter, where all you need to do is put in the zip code and we can find you all those resources as well. Once you've dealt with acute short-term need for food, then is the need to make sure that the family has access to signing up for elements of the nutrition food safety net that will keep them out of food insecurity and help them avoid falling below the poverty level. This, as I said, was extremely powerful during the recession. This kept millions of Americans out of poverty and kept them going. So these are the kind of programs that we have available, and we need to use them aggressively to protect children. Obviously, the SNAP or food stamp program is the biggest in the country. More than 45 million people in the U.S. are on SNAP. What's interesting is, again, myths about this. One is that people who are on SNAP are on it for the long term. Most of these are working families. They're in circumstantial problems with poverty. They use these for a period of a few months, and then they step away. So this is not something where most people are locked in for life or the long haul. The second myth is that they're eating bonbons on the Riviera with this. They get very little support. It is a supplemental nutrition program, so they're only getting about $4 a day, and that is not a lot for family nutritional needs. We created this particular website on our as a subset on our website. This link will take you directly to food insecurity resources. All your family or your assistants in practice would need to do is type in the patient's zip code, and all the resources will present for that area, including food pantries and identify people that can help the family get signed up for SNAP, WIC, CACFP, and school meals. So this is extremely helpful. We also have handouts, and I think Renee already sent that to you, but if not, we have handouts that you can simply identify the child with a 2-question questionnaire, give them the handout, and then identify, using the zip code, identify their local resources for them. WIC is a very powerful program, as we all know. Some people don't realize how many kids are on WIC. It actually covers more than 50% of the kids born during those first couple of years of life are covered by WIC, as is their mother, pregnant mother. And this has really been one of the great things to protect children nutritionally and get them what they need during that crucial time when they're growing so fast and their brain is developing so fast. So WIC is something that's so fundamental to protecting against food insecurity during this high-risk time that almost always we have been good about getting these families signed up. But if you screen at well child visits, you will be surprised by some families that do not outwardly appear to be in trouble, but who are in trouble with food insecurity. And remember, it's important for the nursing mother, it's important for the pregnant mother, and it's important for the child as well during this time. This was a recent publication, just came out in January, Advocacy for Improving Nutrition in the First 1,000 Days, and it simply added to what the story that was being told by a number of pediatricians within the academy about the risks of stress and toxic stress. And in this case, it's nutrition as well. In that first 1,000 days, those kids are not just growing linearly at the fastest rate in life, but they have the highest metabolic rate in life during those 1,000 days, and their brain is tripling in size during that 1,000-day span. So this is a time when nutrition is absolutely fundamental for that child's lifelong health and mental health, and we cannot get it wrong. This is the reason why we need to be screening aggressively. So we've seen some changes in nutrition, particularly since the 2010 Dietary Guidelines. They really were revolutionary. And out of the 2010 Dietary Guidelines, a number of things changed, including school breakfast, school lunch standards, standards for children in child care, and WIC packages. We're just starting to get some of the data on the revised WIC packages, but it has been turning in the direction that we had hoped. We're getting higher quality nutrition among young children. As you may have noticed, two reports. One came from WIC saying that kids in the first 5 years of life in the WIC program were showing less obesity than in the past. And then the second report was NHANES, looking at all kids, not just those in WIC, but all kids, showed that 0 to 5 had actually gone up substantially in the rest of the population. So WIC may be stepping out and beginning to show some really strong benefits of these recent changes. The Child and Adult Care Food Program is the most recent to have meal standards changed. October, they finalized these. As you know, about 66% of women work now. Kids are in child care in many different types of settings, and so it pushes on to try and get nutrition to be improved during this time as well. So if we can identify a child who is at risk, there are ways of strengthening nutrition in child care. School nutrition has improved tremendously since the 90s. If you look at the quality of the meals served and the nutritional stability of kids in the program, it's about 53% of U.S. students qualify for free and reduced. So that same number being in WIC really tells us how much poverty we have in this country that puts children at risk. But about 55 million students per day go to school, and we serve about 45 million breakfast and lunch, many of them to free and reduced price qualified children. We know the outcomes now, having studied this for the last quarter century. It improves diet quality. It lessens the risk of obesity when they participate in school meals, improves class behavior, and boosts academic achievement. We have data for all of that. One of the biggest concerns that has been voiced over the last several years has been what's happening in the summer as kids are out of school. And of course, it's generally a happy time, but not a very happy time for food insecure kids. It's associated with a higher risk of obesity, the summertime months. Kids tend to be fairly inactive and eat a lot of calories during this time, and that combination is a problem. The USDA has made an intensive effort to set up summer meal programs when kids are out of school and get them into their neighborhood. Might be churches or recreation centers or any of a number of different venues. These summer meals are what keeps a food insecure kid going in the summer and prevents them from falling over the edge during that long 3-month stretch. So this is something in all the communities across Ohio. Department of Education is seeking to get these programs as dispersed as possible in all neighborhoods, and the reimbursement is good for this from the USDA, which allows these programs to be self-sustaining. FRAC, the Food Research and Action Center, has worked with the AAP to put together a pediatrician's food insecurity toolkit. And much of the information that I've presented to you is part of this toolkit. But what I was interested in is they gave this 4-step integration into practice guide, and I thought this was really helpful. The first thing they recommended is that you train your staff on food insecurity and identify a hunger champion within the practice. That could be a receptionist, it could be a nurse or nurse's aide, anyone in the practice that has an intense interest in this area that will keep the practice updated and kind of work with those families who are in need. Step 2, of course, is integrating the 2-question food insecurity questionnaire into practice at all well child visits and any nutrition or poverty-related visits. And then make sure that the screen works within your workflow so that you get the information and can react to it. And then Track points out we need to be very sensitive when we screen about this. It's interesting that this is deeply embarrassing to adolescents to be food insecure, but it's extremely stressful for parents who, one, have to try and figure out where they're going to get money for food, and often are going hungry themselves to try and stretch that dollar and get their children food. This is a fundamental piece of parenting, and it does require some sensitivity on our part to help them. But we were talking with Samson Davis, who's a physician who grew up in Newark in poverty, and he said, you know, these families are not looking for us as physicians to run the marathon for them, but they are looking for us to hand out the water that keeps them running. So he urges all of us to look for these families and then just get them connected with the resources. That's what the family really wants. Here is our AAP food emergency handout. It has contact information for getting the parents signed up for WIC SNAP school meals and summer meals, and that is available to all of you, and you can simply hand that out at a time when you screen. So just to wrap up, food insecurity is a significant stress on the family, the parents, and the child. Child health is built on quality nutrition, particularly in the first few years of life, and we can't afford to get it wrong. Our nutrition safety net in this country is extremely powerful, but we have to find the families and get them hooked up happily. Screening is simple, resources are available, and we in the Ohio chapter have got the things by zip code to make it easy for you to do this. So it isn't something you have to solve the problem yourself, but if you can help find them, help find these kids, we can help you connect resources to them. So that's my presentation. I hope we can have some chatter about it.